Hello, welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo. On this episode, we take a look at the revised National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy document and its projected impact within Nigeria's cyber ecosystem. Also up for discussion is the commodification of culture and how culture plays a pivotal role in the promotion of national unity. Of course, Elizabeth Omori is here with me, as usual, and she will handle other segments of the conversation. Lizzie?
Well, on the media review segment, we will be reviewing the Nigerian security architecture, the media perspective, challenges and prospects.
That would be a good one. Well, let's begin the conversation. And so now we begin. There is a new direction in Nigeria, Nigeria's cybersecurity campaign with the recent launching of the revised National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy document by President Muhammadu Buhari. To speak more on these and related issues, I have two members of the National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy Review Committee. Abdul Hakim Ajijola was chairman of the committee, while Elizabeth Kolade was a member. She works with the Defense Space Agency. Welcome both to Insight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I would start with you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure you feel somewhat satisfied with the level of work that your team, and your team carried out in the revised National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy document. I did take a cursory look at the document in an attempt to identify the variants in the 2014 document and that of 2021. But I'm sure you can help us more quickly identify the improvements and how exactly the revised document plugs loopholes and assigns roles to relevant sectors, both public now and private.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. And, you know, in all things, we have to really thank the Almighty. Certainly, one must thank committee members, people like Elizabeth and many other colleagues, definitely the Secretariat, and especially the unsung heroes and heroines that actually made our work possible, but more importantly, ensured that we produce a qualitative outcome. In addition, I really want to thank the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Mongonu, retired, for his leadership. And also, of course, our great thanks to Mr. President for this honor and unique opportunity to serve. Now, to your question, basically, the previous document, the 2014, it was drafted in 2014 but approved in 2015.
2015, yes, that's correct.
Actually gave itself, in line with international good practice, a 5-year lifespan. And this document as well has a similar lifespan. As you know, we are in a sector that is rapidly moving. So there are certainly issues which we couldn't have even dreamt of 5 years ago that have now come to the fore. There were other issues which maybe were in their ascendancy or budding and have now become full-blown issues of concern. What we've tried to do in this document is fundamentally try to give as broad a scope as possible.
Okay.
All the way from the street vendor. I like to always use the example of, Mala Meshai, Mama Alakara, and Mama Okpa. Across the spectrum, but also we've taken into cognizance the young innovators, the technocrats at whatever level, and of course the ultra-high strategic decision makers. And then back to the question you raised, we've tried as much as possible to delegate the jobs and activities to various institutions so that it's not about encroaching on, for example, the work of an existing regulator, but really to encourage them to set up their own systems for the defense, for the cyber defense of their sectors. Of course, we also have put in place an institutional mechanism called the NCCC, the National Cybersecurity Coordination Center,
okay,
whose job, as the word coordination implies, is simply to make sure that the different sectors have some level of coordination, because though each person needs to do their own thing, it has to be within the gambit of what is good for Nigeria, her economy, and most especially her people.
Elizabeth, I'll come to you now. I did also notice that the review identified some of Nigeria's concerns, or perhaps I'll describe them as some of the greatest threats to our cybersecurity. All 7 of them caught my attention, and I wondered how easy or difficult combating issues of malware and viruses as well as data breaches would be for us with the preponderance of information within the cyberspace and our current level of infrastructure in that area. In realizing subsisting and anticipated threats, how quickly can we build infrastructure for this multi-sectorial structure that we have captured in this revised document?
Okay, thank you very much. As the chairman had mentioned, the role of the NCCC is to coordinate the efforts of the different sectors. Now, in talking about building infrastructure to address some of these issues, we have what we call the sectorial sets. So at the sectorial level, each sector has a responsibility to build defense mechanisms to protect the individual sectors and then translate to the NCCC. Also, talking about legal and regulatory frameworks to help us address some of these issues. This also highlights the need for us to actually have a review of this document because the threat in the last 5 years is somewhat different now. So this document also makes provision for legal documents to be reviewed to take into consideration some of these things that you have mentioned, some of these threats that we are faced with currently.
I'll stay on the issue of the legal, since you brought it up, the legal instrument or existing legal instrument to boost cyber security in Nigeria now, and I'd like to know how much so we are doing in the direction towards revising, or how we intend to harmonize our legal framework to align with regional and international instruments in order to have a solid legal base, maybe a foundation, I would say, to combat rising cyber threats. I'll go to the chairman now.
Okay. Fundamentally, we have taken a look at various legal instruments at the international level. Just to name 2, the Budapest Convention, which is really a European convention on cyber crime. And so, of course, that is the leading convention globally on that particular matter. We also took cognizance of the African Union Convention. It's called the Malabo Convention. And basically, that is a convention on cyber security and privacy. Now, security is really an umbrella of which issues like privacy, crime come under. But there are 2 particular areas that I think as a committee we are particularly proud of in terms of the legal issues that we're trying to push forward. One is about online child abuse.
Okay.
The other one is actually, gender rights online. And these, I think, put us in very good stead internationally. We actually have, with this document, have become one of the leading lights in Africa on these matters. So I think this is something, and of course, because this committee itself was really a multi-stakeholder committee, you can see we have older gentlemen like myself and younger ladies like Elizabeth. So there was quite a wide spectrum, very representative of all the critical components of society: civil society, government, the private sector, academia, and so on. So in terms of these legal and regulatory frameworks, at the end of the day, what we are looking at is that we do not seek to take away the legal capacities from existing institutions. It's actually about helping those existing institutions be able to be more responsive and more robust in their, in how they interact with issues of cybersecurity within their own regulatory jurisdictions.
You preempted my question on gender and women, and I was actually going to ask Elizabeth that, but I guess it's something we can still talk about. Elizabeth, you are one of the few, maybe not few, I don't know the exact number of women that sat on the committee. Mr. Chairman, would you help us out there?
I think it's about
women?
five.
About five of them thereabouts. So it must have created some sort of balance to the
Well, you know,
membership
one is worth 20.
Well, Elizabeth, I'd like to know what about opportunities? I mean, you're a lady. I mean, and of course, talking about gender issues now, and of course also opportunities that that are inherent in not just within the cyberspace now, but having revised our document. What opportunities are presented for our youth and for women as well? Would you like to talk about that?
Yes, leaning from what the chairman said, capturing gender perspectives in this document puts us in a very good light internationally. I took a look at a number of documents, a number of cybersecurity strategy documents for a number of countries, and I observed that Nigeria is actually one of the first countries to actually come up with these. Now, in talking about the opportunities, this document makes provision to build capacity for women. Now, in not just building capacity, we also recognize the threats that women are faced with online. So it also makes provision for that. And in the proposition for the amendment of the Cybercrimes Act, it also makes provision for these to be captured in that document.
And I would like to stay with you, Elizabeth, even though I would also want Mr. Ajijola's reaction to this, my next question. But Elizabeth, I am a fan of online shopping, and I say this in spite of the numerous times that I've been preyed upon, by scammers who clone authentic sites. It has happened to me time and time again. Just because of my craze for online shopping, it makes life a whole lot easier, or so I think. But I can't, you can't help but agree that digital transformation has ensured the fast growth of e-commerce and other applications like blockchain. I feel like I should put, and this time I think, Elizabeth, pardon me, but let me just quickly jump to Mr. Chairman. I feel like I should put you on the spot here. Knowing you are a guru in cybersecurity, and so I would ask you this question. Do we stand a good chance of stopping, and I mean successfully in the long run, the incursion of blockchain technology and its application for trade in cryptocurrency, for instance?
Okay, very quickly, cryptocurrency is but one of the many uses and applications of blockchain.
True.
What blockchain actually brings forward, or the possibility opens, is for increased trust. And nobody uses any infrastructure, any platform, if you do not have full and complete trust. For example, today, I doubt few of us would travel from Abuja to Kaduna at night by road. There's a trust issue or trust deficit. So if you want to use any infrastructure, you must make sure that that infrastructure engenders trust. And how do you engender trust? You make sure that it is safe, which is the cybersecurity component. And while I'm trying to do my best to avoid delving too far into the issues of cryptocurrencies, I as an individual believe that it's a wave. It's here to stay. And so the questions we should ask ourselves as a society is, how do we capitalize on this? And I'd like to give two issues. For example, we all know that in Nigeria we have a national mint, NSPMC. And so the question that I would raise is, what does the national mint produce? Well, it produces cash, but it also produces secure documents, in a nutshell. So what's it going to produce in the 21st century? This is something, as a society, we need to ask ourselves. We need to have these conversations. And I would encourage the CBN to lead and coordinate these kind of conversations. This is what we envisage as part of the outcome of this policy document, so that there's an interrelationship. Now, having said that, we have some unique opportunities. We have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is coming into force at some point.
Yes.
And it's an opportunity for all of us. But it is also an opportunity to develop a continental currency. And if we can develop a continental currency, possibly in the 21st century, we should put it on some of these new platforms. So again, I would encourage the CBN, because Nigeria really is a leader in Africa inherently, to actually lead the other African central banks to look at the possibility of developing an African continental digital currency, because the issues about the currency are who controls monetary policy, who controls money supply. And it has to be some kind of institution like the CBN and its partners across the continent. But in order to do that, they do need to take leadership in that process so that they actually are ahead of the wave. Sorry, we are digressing.
But I intend to take up the issue of cryptocurrency, its application. And
I'd like to talk about other opportunities as we go
in another
further,
occasion, and so we'll just move on now. And I'll come to you, Elizabeth, and again I'll play the devil's advocate here and ask about the safeguards being put in place to guarantee safety and quality assurance in Nigeria's drive for a fully operational digital economy. I mean, it's a project for us right now. I do not have a clear-cut idea of scope in terms of measurements of our plans for digital economy, but I know it means, or it could mean more work for us in terms of cybersecurity if we ultimately want to use, or rather, use ICT in almost every economic field. I mean, how does that work for us? Again, I know that this might be difficult, but I mean, what are your views on this generally? Elizabeth?
Okay, sorry, I thought you said you were going to come
Sorry,
back
I caught
to
you
me.
napping there.
Yes, okay. First, one of the things that this document addresses is the awareness and education of the citizenry. So when we talk about the opportunities that exist in the cyberspace, there is also the place of the citizenry understanding the responsibility that they hold in their everyday operations in the cyberspace. And ultimately, we want to ensure we want to ensure trust and security of the cyberspace. We want to ensure that people have trust, as the chairman had mentioned earlier, in the cyberspace. So one way, aside the mechanisms that we put in place in ensuring security of this space, also lies on the responsibility of the citizenry. People need to be aware, and this also comes under one of the pillars of these documents in the area of governance and coordination. As long as we cannot exactly stop people and what they can do on the cyberspace, we cannot afford to leave this domain unsupervised, uncoordinated, ungoverned, so to say.
Okay, I'll come over to the chairman now and take you up on the issue of data privacy. Explain to me how data privacy guarantees protection and how it factors in the rights of the user. Of course, while speaking to that, please create, if it's possible, a hypothetical scenario, but quite likely to play out here in Nigeria, on big data protection, where a user's right can be easily dismissed, or, I mean, you know?
Okay.
You want to speak to that, Elizabeth?
Go ahead.
Please do, and then I'll come over to...
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
In our day-to-day use of mobile devices and applications, there are terms and conditions that we assent to. We have the right to either assent to these or decline these services.
But you know, most of us don't read it.
Well, that's why awareness is very important. So many people, like you mentioned, people do not read this, but now there is an awareness on the need for people to actually read this. Taking a look at the recent
They're usually bulky. I find it very difficult to read that.
You have to take the responsibility. If you want to use a digital solution, you have to take the responsibility if you're concerned about your privacy, you're concerned about your money, so to say. When money is concerned, people are always very wary. You have to take this responsibility to actually read it. There's something we call ease of use, functionality and security in cybersecurity. The more you're trying to ensure security, the less easy it is for people to use. But if you're security conscious, which is a place of awareness, you have to actually take that responsibility. Like we say, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility, irrespective of the strong infrastructural measures you put in place to ensure security. If the user doesn't have the right information, there is little or less that you can actually do to protect.
Would you like to add something quickly to that, because we're fast losing time?
Yes, there are a lot of
quickly,
people who actually believe that they have nothing to hide, and therefore privacy is not their problem. And to those people, I will say, yes, you have nothing to hide, but yet you hide in the bathroom. So that, but more importantly, we have to begin to understand as a society that your data has value. That is actually how these big global firms make money. It's from your data. And so basically what they're doing is that they're taking your data free and selling it or using it for adverts or whatever other purpose. And they make more money than the Nigerian economy. And yet you have no piece of that action. I think that's something we need to change.
Unfortunately, we're completely out of time, but there are a couple of issues that I wanted to ask both of you on the pillars of, the 8 pillars of the new national cybersecurity policy and strategy. But let me very quickly, if that's possible, take you both on the aspect of fostering protection for key national information infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about the data now, but of course, there's also facilities, there's, institutions and all of that. I'll ask you a pointed question, Mr. Chairman. Are we currently saving the data on platforms like the National Identity Number, the International Passport Number, and the National Driver's License information? Are we saving them in the clouds or servers physically stationed in key locations within, or are they outside Nigeria? Very quickly.
They're local. They're stored locally, not on the cloud. The organizations that you've mentioned actually have local servers within our vicinity.
Are they safe?
Yes, by and large. But please understand, in life, unless it's created by the Almighty, there's nothing that you cannot improve upon. And that is why things like cybersecurity, actually, you must consider them as a journey, not a destination. And that is why from time to time you do need to upgrade these policies and strategies and even the legislation. But if I could just quickly slip something
very
in,
quickly,
two things in.
Out of time, yeah.
One, there's a cybersecurity market. The African cybersecurity market in the next 2 years is valued at $4.5 billion. What piece of that action is Nigeria going to get? What jobs are we going to create? What wealth can we generate? And by extension, what taxes can government get? That is part of what we are looking at in this policy. And anybody that wants to download the policy, let me just give you the site. It's free, it's available. It's https, then CERT, that is Computer Emergency Response Team.gov.ng. When you go to that landing page, you will see this document. Download it for free, read it, digest it, act on it.
On that note, would end this segment of the discussion. It's been an amazing, insightful, a couple of minutes for me, and I hope for the viewer as well. I want to thank you both, gentlewoman, for coming on Insight. It's been a pleasure speaking to both of you on this issue. Abdul Hakim Ajijola, Chairman Committee on the National Cyber Security Policy and Strategy Review Committee, and of course Elizabeth Kolade as well. Thank you so much for coming on Insight. We'll move on now and talk about cultural psychology. As so much has already been said about cultural erosion in Nigeria, and cutting across personal, society, and historical culture. Basically, we know that among other things, culture influences our belief about what is true and false. It impacts our attitudes, including our likes and dislikes. It influences our values regarding what is right and wrong, and even determines our behavior to a significant level. It is from all of these cultural influences that our identities are formed. But can culture transcend ethnic roots and redefine our identity? Are there moral questions regarding cultural preservation and commodification? Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture, NCAC, Otumba Olusegun Roshenwe joins me in the studio to discuss the erosion of cultural values, the commodification of culture, and its impact on a fast-evolving society like ours. Otumba, it's good to have you here on Insight.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
I realize that even as culture increasingly becomes a commodity, that is a valued object worthy of preservation and presentation, there's still a question over what parts of culture are worth preserving and what parts are worth showing off. I mean, and I ask this question against the backdrop of increasing social changes around the world and our struggle to be active members now of the global village. Otumba, you will know, we are already seeing how outside influences can be strong, especially on our youth population. So which parts of our culture are worth saving and showcasing, and which parts are not?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. First and foremost, I must say this here. Culture is about the people, our heritage, our food, our clothing, everything about us. Culture is the identity of the people that even speaks for the people when you are not around there. So for me, I must thank your production, NTA in particular, for coming up with this particular segment, which we need to enlighten and reawaken the consciousness of our people on the values of our culture and why we need to use culture to preserve the best of the unity and bridge in this country. So basically, if you will take some time for us to look at what culture can do for us as a people in terms of our identity, in terms of who we are, in terms of who speaks for us, and series of things like that. But for a very long time, because of the social media, because of the birth of the WhatsApp, of the Facebooks, Instagram, etc., we are deviating from our cultural values to imbibing other people's culture, which, of course, not helping us. Today, the culture of respect, which we all know was fundamental in our upbringing. There's this popular saying that a couple give birth to a child, but culturally, so many couples bring up the child. Not just the couple that give birth.
That's when they say that a community owns a child.
Now, in the last 2 weeks, a child took a gun to school to shoot the lecturer because she was wearing a wig.
To threaten.
To threaten. It was going to shoot, yes. The second one, a student was not doing well in a course, and he went with gun again to threaten a lecturer. For God's sake, what is our values becoming? We've lost them. We're losing them. So our job, which we've insisted, we must come and let our youth realize the values of our culture. And culturally, we also help each other. We are the keepers of other people's environment. You are a brother's keeper.
Yeah.
Those values are losing things. That even recently, some families will not even bother to greet the next family around them. Everybody lives for him or herself. That's not part of our culture. So our culture is about carrying everybody along, making sure that there's unity of purpose on what we're living on. But in the recent time, we're losing those vibes, which I believe strongly we need to reawaken our people and tell them that our culture is about peace, it's about togetherness, it's about respect to elders, which the values are dropping.
Otumba, you, and we know this for a fact, you're a champion of cultural renaissance in not just in Nigeria now, in Africa and at large. But I'll say this, as the world evolves, I mean, getting a definitive description of culture becomes quite complicated, more so in recent years. Perhaps this is even more difficult as we know that culture can be dynamic. Historical culture, however, is difficult to change, even though it can be repackaged for presentation. Are we doing enough with our historical culture in terms of commodification, especially as a nexus of tourism, whether domestic or international now?
Yes, we are. I can tell you for a fact that in the recent times, we've now been bringing back our historical cultural values. If you look at some of the items that was brought up, we are now enlightening the younger Nigerians, the youths that look, the leaders of yesterday, the Azikiwes, the Tafawa Balewas, the Awolowos, the Okparas, fought for the unity of this country. That is part of the historical aspect of it. And it has helped to a large extent. So many of the youth now are realizing, oh, is this how we come about where we are, where we're coming from, and where we plan to be? We said in our national item, the labors of our heroes past shall not be in vain. Yeah. But recently, we are almost coming out to imbibe the vein so that nobody respects each other's value. So for me, the historical aspect of it is key. Yeah. A people without history cannot make progress because you must know where you're coming from. You must know what you left behind. You must realize what your perception of the future is. So historical aspect of culture is key for development. It is also key for uniting the country, which recently we have some little issues there, which we are, I use the word, I want to use culture to unite Nigerians stronger and better than it were in the few years past. So, yeah.
Yeah, Otumba, you did agree that we are doing enough to commodify culture. But you've not actually spoken to that. Indeed, you've talked about the essence and core imperatives for the preservation of historical culture. I'd like for you, in practical terms, to give us examples of how we are commodifying historical culture in Nigeria. Perhaps, because I did talk about also commodifying it as a nexus for tourism now, whether domestic or international. How exactly is that working out for us? If you can speak to that specifically.
Specifically, you cannot promote tourism without cultural content.
Very true.
The cultural content is the brand identity, which you are going to showcase to the world. If you bring the whole tourist to Nigeria without a content of your cultural values, you've not achieved anything. Because the people coming are used to seeing something over there. They want to see something different. So that's what my job is. And I've been able to put it on the forefront. One, NAFES.
I was going to come to that because because that is our national festival, as a matter of fact. And I was so that you do not preempt what. But let me just quickly redirect our conversation towards NAFES now, because this is it's become a tradition somewhat, and I think this year will be about the, if I'm not mistaken, about the 36th or 35th edition, I beg your pardon. Thank you so much. But talk to me a bit about NAFEST and how it has helped to engender awareness and grow consciousness on arts and culture that we can celebrate as a community of multi-ethnic groupings. How exactly has NAFEST succeeded as, one, a strategy for national unity, and two, as a management tool for rapid development of arts in Nigeria?
Thank you so very much. In 1970, after the Civil War, it was quite clear to our leaders then that what can reunite our people, reorientate us, and bring us together as a country of family with focus to unity of purpose. And it was two brands that we identified, sports and culture. And that's why you have the National Festival for Sport, National Festival for Art and Culture. Now, since 1970, we've been taking NAFES from one state to the other. The idea is, and I must say this on this platform today. In 2018, we went to Port Harcourt, River State.
Yes.
Some participants from Kano State have never been to the south part of Nigeria. That was the first time. And they were shocked and amused that what they read and they get to hear about Port Harcourt and River State was entirely false. The people were very homely. We enjoyed our stay there. There was no problem. So, in a nutshell, we use NAFES to unite, to build bridges. So all the 36 states will move to one state, plus Abuja making 37. We'll now get to know the people there. We now move from there to another state. For instance, this year, we're going to Ekiti State.
I'd like to take you back to the issue of cultural erosion now, and it is clear that cultural changes can be traced and analyzed to give us a better understanding of why our society is the way it is. It also infers that culture can be learned, which accounts, of course, for the importance of socializing institutions like the family, the school, peer groups, and the media. Of course, the media is also part of agents of socialization. Osumba, if you perhaps agree with those who say that our youth population are more vulnerable, to cultural erosion, which in turn has negatively impacted on national values and morals, does it mean that these agents of socialization, families, schools, are not doing enough, or they have failed in their responsibility of molding the character of young people in Nigeria?
Well, first and foremost, the family values have failed us. So many families don't even take time to even visit the school their children are attending to find out what they are doing. So some family, until the last day of graduation, that they will go to the school to find out, and then they find out that the child they are going for graduation has never even been to school. So that's number one, the values. Now, number two, our teachers. Our teachers are fond of selling handouts than imbibing the culture of proper good education and morals on the youth. That's another aspect. The third one, of course, is the peer group. Most times, some international NGOs give money to some of these peer groups to influence other unsuspected youths
Allegedly.
To get into the wrong part of life. And Nigeria, we're the one paying dearly for it. For instance, when Yahoo started, we didn't face it head on. When Boko Haram started, we didn't face it head on. Now, as of today, we have over 4 million Nigerians into drug. So the next thing we have to do now is to start to enlighten our people the dangers of these values and what it can cause for the next generation of Nigerians, which, of course, we must work hard and build a better future for them.
There's also the issue of language as a national value now. And some of our ethnic languages here in Nigeria might be going extinct. Isn't that reflective of the factors, same factors driving cultural erosion? And are we fast losing a part of ourselves that is supposed to be part of our identity?
Well, this I must tell you today. It's unfortunate. It's something that is painful. If you go to a meeting now and you speak Yoruba, Hausa, or Igbo, and you make mistakes, you can manage it. But don't attempt to speak English and make mistakes. People will boo you. English is not our mother tongue in the first place. Yeah, we must quickly look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values. That if you don't speak good English, then you are nobody. Please, the time has come that we must start to respect our mother tongue. It may take some time. I am appealing that we could retain English with one other or two of our languages. We have over 300 ethnic groups in Nigeria. Why should we take only English. If you speak English here now and make a mistake, if you want to use she for E or E for she, people will start laughing at you. But if you make that mistake in Yoruba, in Hausa and Igbo, nobody will even know you've done anything. So I agree totally with you that we need to come to terms and realize that we have a mother tongue which is key to the development of our nation.
Otunba, before we round off this conversation, I'd like to return again to the issue of Nigeria's unity and the phenomenon of elusive peace. I'd like for us to reinterrogate the role of culture in the quest for sustainable development. You've talked about that time and time again. I mean, why is it that valued components of our cultural heritage have not been systematically articulated and integrated into the mainstream of political ideology and socio-economic philosophy? And I say this, let's take for instance, Otuba, would it be considered ludicrous to have an Ifa priest administer the oath of allegiance on a political office holder? I mean, is that even conceivable constitutionally, perhaps, as a fallout of Nigeria's cultural renaissance?
Well, thank you very much. Let me take the first aspect of your question. One, the reason why we have the reason why we have challenges in this country more is because we don't respect each other's culture. Simple. The Hausa man said before you enter his house, remove your shoes. He says his prayers there. Why are you disagreeing with him? The Igbo man says, bring cola. Let us pour liberation before we go into business. You don't agree with him. The Yoruba man wants to wash his hand and eat his amala with his hand. He does not believe in spoon. These are cultural beliefs of people. Why don't you allow them? If you respect everybody's culture, peace will return to Nigeria fully. I can tell you this. You may take what I'm saying for a little thing, but it's a very big thing.
No, I take it quite seriously.
Yes.
I mean, that's why I'm asking you this question. Why have we not been able to mainstream some of these ideals into perhaps the most significant aspects of our life? Politics, economy, I mean, just about every phase of our life. I gave you the Ifa priest example.
Yeah,
why would it even be ludicrous? I mean, why is it laughable for us as a people? It is our culture. Before Christianity and Islam came, we had a traditional, system of worship. And I mean, I am not encouraging people to become Ifa worshippers or traditionalists, but I met my grandma, and I can tell you, she said back in the day, she would go to the farm, and then she would pack her produce and put on the road, and return back to the farm to pick some other stuff, and then she will come back to the road, and nobody tampers with what she kept on the road there. There's no such thing. If there were at the time, it wasn't popular. There was no theft. People respected the gods and feared the vengeance of the gods. Can we not subject our political office holders to taking an oath of allegiance, perhaps swearing to these same gods? I mean, I know most of them are not traditionalists, and they are Christians. These are Christians or Islam. So can we begin to take aspects of our culture like that and perhaps mainstream them into our life? Is that even possible?
You see, first and foremost, we must be guided that we have a constitution.
Yes, we do. I said, is it conceivable?
No, which recognizes Christianity and Islam. That's why if you go for most programs, they call you to say prayers. You see, the Ifa stuff, we need to be a bit careful with it. And why would we be very careful with it? It's simple. Most times, you don't give the international and visitors the wrong impression about us as a people. One, you want to bring concussion on the table. You know, when you come to the Ifa thing, they have a lot of things they bring on the table. We cannot, at this time, the whole world is going to an IT base. Okay. We cannot afford to, put ourselves behind the world, be moving backward. We should be moving forward. So for that one, it will be a bit difficult. Secondly, let me clear something here today.
Please go ahead.
There is no country in the world that have total peace. Every country in the world has its own Boko Haram with a different name and a different meaning. And there's no country in the world that can become a champion without challenges. you must face some few challenges. So you have a story to tell. And that is the value of historical culture of a people, which I mentioned earlier on. Obafemi Awolowo built the university in Ibadan, the Liberty Stadium. Tafawa Balewa did the same thing, ABU Zaria, University of Nsukka by Okpara and Co. You see, every leader, what we need to do now is to start to celebrate the best among us.
Okay.
Instead of celebrating the best among us, we try to bring them down. That is a cultural fundamental value we need to revisit, which I think for another day.
Sorry to interject, we're totally out of time now. We've spent half an hour discussing these issues. But very quickly, Otumba, before I let you go, I know you have been quite vocal on the rising trend of cross-dressing as a subculture in Nigeria. A lot of people, especially people of faith, believe that it might actually lead to the acceptance of homosexuality in Nigeria. Homosexuality is against the law in Nigeria. It attracts a 14-year prison fine. Cross-dressing isn't against the law. If it is, I mean, it's not very clear on that. And while, I mean, I don't know, but oftentimes these cross-dressers claim that they are not gay. The fear, however, is that the emergence of these men who dress like women might be a way to subtly make homosexuality accepted in the country. What do we do at this point?
Thank you very much.
Very quickly, Otumba.
Very. In 1992, two countries, Uganda and Senegal, rejected what they called sex tourism. Look, all of this is a strategy of building a very dangerous cultural value on the youth of the country. One, they rejected it in 1992. Only 2 weeks ago in Cameroon, the head of the cross-dressers, who ended up to be an homosexual, has been imprisoned in Cameroon. Last week in Uganda, there was a serious debate. They now found out that some allegedly NGOs finance some of these people to give them the rope. Look, it's the height of sickness. And number two, let's not forget, God created a man and a woman. If you don't want to be a man, it's between you and your God. But please don't come and celebrate it in our country. Our country don't accept it. It's a 14 years imprisonment. If you think you cannot manage, then move to the clients that appreciate and celebrate it. On this, please, let me quickly mention. The son of a very respected Nigerian, about 3 weeks ago, came out and declared that I'm a gay. And I've been a gay since the age of 10, and he's 39. The father was never himself again. Let us please, for God's sake, don't encourage these people. It's the height of sickness. They are sick. They don't know where they belong. But we should not allow that. And on this, finally, please, from me, any society that encourages this, don't get the favor of God.
You mean cross-dressing now?
No. Look,
homosexuality.
They are just deceiving the people.
Okay.
But nobody can deceive us. There's nothing like cross-dressing. It's all imbibed in homosexuality and lesbianism. Why should God said we should go to the world to increase? These characters come and marry themselves and adopt children of regular human beings who are their children. So it is not good for our culture. I will never encourage it, will never accept it, and it's not part of us.
At this point, Otumba, I would like to thank you very much for coming, on the program. Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture, Otumba Olusegun Roshinwe. It's been an amazing affair, and I hope you would come back on the program sometime real soon.
Thank you very much. Anything to do with the Project Nigerian, any day, anytime, I'm too ready to take it up.
Elizabeth Omoru is up next with the Media Review segment.
Countries across the globe are confronted with security issues, Nigeria inclusive. Insecurity in Nigeria has become a source of concern both to Nigerians and the international community. How do we redesign our entire security architecture? My guest, Joseph Undu, National President, Benue Journalist Forum Nigeria, will provide answers. Mr. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on Insight.
You're welcome.
All right, let's begin with our security architecture. How would you describe our architecture?
Thank you. The Nigerian security architecture want to suggest that the president rejig his strategies. I want to suggest the president think deep and come up with more workable policy, national policy on security to ensure that the Nigerian people are safe. You know, we are experiencing a rural to urban migration now because of the high rate of insecurity in our rural areas.
With the spate of kidnapping and banditry, what seems to have gone wrong in the process of securing lives and property?
I want to believe that what happened was not technically defeating Boko Haram, but the Boko Haram element were technically dislodged from Sambisa forest, which made it possible for them to migrate to other parts of the country, which we are seeing this high-rise banditry and other criminalities around the country. Security agencies are there as implementers of government policies to make sure that the country is kept safe. The security agencies cannot do enough because they are only implementers of policies. They are not formulators. So those who are vested with the responsibility by virtue of their election into political offices to come up with these policies should live up to expectation.
Okay, I'd like to come in there. In terms of reportage, how have we fared reporting security and crimes in Nigeria?
To the best of my knowledge as a journalist, I know that the media industry has been doing its best in the reportage on this insurgency of a thing in the country. Over time, the media industry practitioners have even paid supreme prices in the course of the discharge of their duties. We are working in a very challenging environment. We have several challenges. The journalists have several challenges confronting them, but because they are patriotic, because they have put the national interest first, they continue to do their best. This has given rise to the high rate of awareness about this insecurity situation of a thing.
Okay, so now how can the media help to eliminate the fear of these threats?
One, strategic partnership with the government.
Okay.
We play a key role in this. There is need for high level sensitization among the populace. There is need for high level engagement with the civil populace. The Inspector General of Police, Muhammad Adamu, has come up with a community policing agenda, which I believe will also come into play here. The collaboration between the security agencies, the government, and the media will help a lot in mitigating the fear amongst rural populace and even those in the urban areas. This insecurity situation we are suffering today is mostly being perpetrated against the most vulnerable members of the society. Another area the government can come in is by sponsoring targeted messages that will help to instill a confidence in the populace, in the rural populace, because right now as it is, there is what we call rural-urban migration. People are leaving the rural areas to the urban areas because of the fear of kidnapping, fear of attacks and everything. And there is high level of influx of people in the urban area, which is itself another security threat. You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now have no place to live. They have no shelter. They have no source of income, and they are roaming the streets. Some engaged in petty or menial jobs. You know, they are doing these things. Some of them have practically nothing to live for.
All right, Joseph Undu, National President, Benue Journalist Forum Nigeria, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for giving me this real privilege to air my views on this very important topic.
Thank you very much.
And that's it on this segment of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Remember, be your brother's keeper. Report any suspicious movement to the police. We'll see you next week.